This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back into our final episode of the year. This is Viterbi Voices, and my name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering, and introducing herself for the very last time as our co-host, Audrey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a senior studying mechanical engineering. I'm excited to be here for our last episode of season 6.
Season 6, it's our last episode. It's your last episode as co-host. It's a very sentimental episode. We're gonna do a lot to get you there. And to send you off is our brand new, introduced for the very first time, our brand new co-host that will be replacing or doing, I don't say replace Audrey, but will be taking Audrey's microphone. Is that the best way to call it? I don't know. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Emily.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Emily and I'm a junior studying biomedical engineering, and I'm excited to see where the podcast goes next year, but obviously it'll be pretty hard to follow in Audrey's footsteps.
Talk about big shoes to fill. Audrey, just a quick recap. You have been basically co-hosting the podcast, essentially running the podcast. I mean, we talk about it a few times that I really don't do a lot except show up for a recording here or there. But you manage the entire podcast system. You have done tremendous work over 2 full years of making this work. Your first episode was episode 120, where we did a season 5 teaser. And in that, you kicked off the most prolific run of podcast episodes we've ever seen in 6 years. Over the 2 years that you were managing the podcast team, you did 98 episodes, which is unheard of. I think the average of hosts, or we should call them, I guess, producers of the podcast, maybe average around 30 per year. Is that about right? Is that what I think you had before you?
Yeah, I think so. I think we definitely released a lot in the past year for sure. So
it was 119 episodes over 4 seasons, and you did 98 over your 2. I mean, let's put that into perspective. Yeah. 119 over 4 years and 98 over your 2. Audrey, how did you do it?
Well, I had a lot of help, especially this year. We've had a good team of a lot of new people, including Emily, of course. Now she's seasoned, but and I think this year too we were a little more willing to repurpose other things on the podcast, which I think was sort of fun to kind of give people another way to access our live chats or stuff like that. But in terms of how I fit that into my schedule, I think at times I'm definitely a perfectionist. So at times I don't think everything has met my standards, but we did it anyway. So that's one way. But that's been good for me, I think, because it's allowed me to kind of relax a little bit and just work on getting things out. And then, I think my junior year was definitely a bit of a challenge. Anyone who's in mechanical engineering knows that's a really hard year. And I am a busy person, but I think honestly over the years, I always really enjoyed recording podcasts. I love just sitting and chatting with people for an hour or so. And there's so many incredible people at USC. I remember my first year when I wasn't a host, I did an episode on rocket propulsion lab, and I was just kind of sitting and chatting with a couple of my friends and just hearing I think sometimes you don't realize how incredible your friends are, and it's such a good opportunity to sit and sort of listen and really learn about them in a deep way. And I think kind of the same I've really found that in a lot of episodes, so that's really fun for me. And I think for me it's just been a great way to learn more about people that I know about and things that I know about at USC, but don't really know about until you ask the questions. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular podcasts that you released that stand out to you?
Gosh, I think the first year, again, kind of going back to my first year, I got really excited about, I did an episode on Case++, which is the Center for AI and Society. And I kind of had this vision of sort of a new series. We don't really do series anymore, but we used to sort of do series. So on like the impact engineering can have outside of just engineering, right? Because Case is focused on sort of ethics and AI. So I think I really enjoyed making that podcast, and that kind of like sparked an interest in me on kind of seeing the applications of engineering outside of engineering, which is a theme at USC as well. So I think over the past season or two, and I mentioned this at the beginning, we've kind of broken out of the shell of like, it has to be this way every time, and kind of doing some different things. Like this season, we've had a lot that people have made on like artists of Viterbi. I know Emily London made one last semester. We've had some on Troy Camp. I know Paul and I did one on Troy Camp last year, and then Emily, you did one this year. So I think things like that are just really fun to see, kind of that side of engineering where it is really focused on like other things, and that's what makes engineering cool. So
If I remember correctly, it was your ideas on impact that really kind of cemented your role as host. You're like, I really have these ideas and I want to, and I was like, well, why don't you just take over the whole thing? Want to make a series? Let's just do the whole thing.
Yeah. I think there's ideas that didn't come to fruition, but
Yeah,
we made a lot of fun episodes too. Like honestly, some of the most fun I've had are ones just chatting about like housing or certain classes. We did Love at Viterbi this semester. That was a big highlight. I thought that was super fun. I
you didn't want to do it. You didn't want to do it.
First. I'm promoting these podcasts everywhere. I'm like, if you haven't listened to Love at Viterbi, go listen to it. And people like don't accept that from me. Like,
yeah.
Love at Viterbi.
My whole house listened to Love at Viterbi,
really?
all 10 of us.
Well,
yeah, because I was telling them like, oh, I'll be the host of like the Viterbi Voices podcast next year, and they're like, oh, can we listen to an episode? And it was right during the Love at Viterbi one, so we all listened to that one.
Well, and what were their thoughts?
They liked it. They were like, Paul and Audrey sound like super cool people. I'm not just saying that. They actually said that.
Well, that's good. I don't think we've gotten that reaction.
I've never gotten that reaction, which is cool. Yeah. So that's good to know. I'll make sure and put that on my resume then. Make sure that people go listen to Love at Viterbi. What when you go back over the last 2 years, Audrey, I honestly don't take this the wrong way. I honestly feel like you've been doing this for 4 years. Like I feel like you've been doing this for so long. It's really hard to remember before Audrey, like because you've made the podcast run, and I'll say this as the largest compliment, with little to no involvement from me. Like you just done it, and I've always known in the back of my head, I don't need to worry about podcast. It's going great, and she'll tell me when I'm needed. It's the coolest compliment I could pay you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been kind of like a nice like cadence in my life, just like something I do every week. So
has anything changed about you since you started the podcast, you think? Has it had any effect on you at all?
Yeah, gosh, it was so funny. I was listening. I'm not a big podcast listener, but I'm a big NPR listener. Like I just have always really listened to NPR. So it was like the 50th anniversary of All Things Considered. So I was listening to that episode, and they were talking about kind of having a radio voice, or like a voice for the radio waves. And I don't feel like I've ever had that. I kind of have like a raspy voice. So apologies to anyone who's had to hear that. But so I don't think that's changed. I don't think I've gotten my radio voice, but I think like I'm a pretty private person. So I think that's one thing, like being comfortable kind of being in a sort of public setting. Although I think it's also like led me to appreciate that part of myself too. Like not everything needs to be shared. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, just like being okay with like talking in a semi-public way every week. Although it's not like a million people are listening to our podcast, but there's some out there. So
We're getting listens every week. I mean, we've
yeah.
got, I mean, granted, yeah, we're not NPR, we're not Joe Rogan, or we're not any of those, but we're getting hundreds and hundreds of listens every single week, which I think is still pretty good for what we do. We have a pretty limited audience. And you know, Audrey, you and I have looked at it before, but the listen stats, in addition to not only you just being so prolific in the amount of episodes that you've put out and managed, you've also taken our stats like to huge heights. You know, nobody can see what I'm doing right now, but basically imagine just a hill that just keeps raising year after year after year. We had a lot of fantastic listens over your tenure, and people, I think, got really interested in the content. I will say, our applications this year had more mentions of Viterbi Voices than I've ever seen. That's all anecdotal, but I mean, there is some consistency there as far as like, oh, I feel like I saw it once or twice. Now I felt like I saw it dozens and dozens of times, where they mention specific episodes or mention specific things that have come up. And I think we mentioned it on the podcast once, or maybe we mentioned it, I don't know whether it was recorded, where we actually had an answer of one of our questions in the form of our podcast. And
Yes.
Did we say this on the air, or was that just you and I?
No, we were just chatting about it.
Yeah. So there was a student who applied and wrote the answer to their, like, what they want to study at USC in the form as if they were the host of Viterbi Voices, the co-host, and like and in that episode they were reflecting back. But it was I don't want to tell people it's a good or bad idea, but it was just a really interesting, like, oh, that's cool. Like, how neat is that?
That is funny. Yeah, I think that is a cool part. I know a couple of kind of admitted students I've talked to mentioned the podcast, and one in particular is super interested in like how it's made and stuff like that. And that's something this year too. It's like really been simplified a lot because of being remote. Yeah. So that's a big change. And I think obviously it's hard to get studio quality audio over Zoom. Yeah. So that's kind of something we've had to live with at times, but
especially after we bought that cool board that's sitting in my office with collecting dust right now. Or I guess it's in its case, but we bought that whole new board last year.
Like at the end of last year. Yeah. No, we had it.
So sad.
We used it for a year. Yeah. So like the 2019, basically fall 2019 into the pandemic was our whole new mixing board with mics and everything. And everything was like sounding super. I went back and listened to one of those episodes. I was like, that's nice. And then we get to our Zoom calls and I'm like,
yeah. Yeah. So hopefully for our listeners, get excited for hopefully some better quality audio next year.
Either way, we'll have better quality audio. I have a few plans that I haven't discussed with Emily yet, but we're going to have better quality audio. We're going to invest in our remote recordings, which I think should help.
That sounds like a good idea.
What advice do you have for Emily?
Oh gosh, I guess just have fun with it. I think like Paul and I in our intros this year, we got into this cadence of like sounding just like super sad in every intro. We weren't, but that's just like the way we sounded. So sorry to everyone. I wasn't miserable every week, but that's just how it sounded.
It's probably because we were squeezing them in between like 3 other meetings. Like, do you have 10 minutes here? Okay, great, let's do it. Yeah. Hi, everyone, let's go. Okay, bye.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think just like really take it as an opportunity to like get to know the people. I mean, I think as hosts, you're not always, other people are gonna be doing interviews too, but just making podcasts, take it as an opportunity to get to know who you're talking to and have fun with it. And bring new ideas on the podcast. I think that's the other thing too this year. We kind of started saying like, oh gosh, we've already made a podcast about that. Like always kind of searching for new ideas. And I still think there's a ton out there that is super fun and can really highlight some interesting parts of Viterbi.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited to get this started.
I'm excited to hear your episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this too much about you, Emily, but real quick, because there's going to be all you in our next episodes. But what do you anticipate the podcast looking like in the future? What do you have any thoughts or ideas that you want to talk about for your vision for the podcast as you take over and go into, is this season 7? Are we really doing season 7? This is 7 years. Wow. Season 7 is all yours, Emily. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been talking to it a lot with my other friends that listen to podcasts, and I was kind of thinking about like incorporating like USC news or something into the intros and outros, just so we can kind of like contextualize what's going on at USC, kind of highlight, because we can't talk about everything that's going on at USC, and there's always something interesting each week. So I was thinking about that. And then I think just like continuing like with Audrey's vision of like moving farther than just like strict Viterbi and engineering things. Like I'm very involved outside of engineering, and I'd love to bring that even more onto the podcast and like get to know students specifically individually, because a lot of the students have such unique experiences. You couldn't get that from interviewing like, I don't know, just like a group of one club.
I think it's a great idea. We definitely need to talk about that. But I know one thing I want to do, because we had a great highlight this year with Love at Viterbi, as you all have discussed. But I think we definitely want to bring more alumni onto the podcast. I think that those were really, really fun and interesting interviews, and make that more of a regular trend, because I think they also tell not only the academic story, which we get with faculty and students, stuff like that, but it tells this whole other story about trajectory in life and where people go with it and what happens now. And also it helps with that, that question that we get all the time from prospective students, which is, what is the thing that I should do to become the most successful like version? And I think the answer that we always come up with is that there isn't an answer to that question other than follow what you like to do, I guess is the best way to say it.
And I always get the question like, what can I do after I graduate? And that's just you can do anything you want. I know people who have gone into medical school, they've gone like the full 360 and now they volunteer or go abroad, anything. There's so many different opportunities after you graduate. It would be cool to highlight that even more.
Absolutely. Even though people never believe us. Oh, I can do whatever. Sure. I get that. I've been told that everything since I was an elementary student. I'm like, no, but this is actually true. As an engineering student, you can do whatever you want. That's a good transition back to Audrey. So Audrey, we've talked about it a lot, but you're about to leave. Yes. You're about to graduate. Finals are wrapping up.
Yes.
What's happening now? What are your next steps here? Tell everybody what's happening.
Yeah, so I am graduating from USC, which is exciting. It's been a great 4 years. I think I like feel ready for it, but that's easy to say when it's like finals, and we'll see how that feels during graduation. And then afterwards, I'm going to be in LA for a little bit longer, kind of just enjoying my time here. I love LA. It's been such a privilege to be here the past 4 years. I'm super grateful for that. And then in August, I'm gonna move to Seattle, the Seattle area, and work in Redmond. So not quite Seattle, but close to Seattle, for Microsoft as a mechanical engineer. So that's what's next for me.
Do you know what you'll be doing at Microsoft, or are you allowed to tell us where you're working?
I don't know specifically. I have a pretty good idea. I think that's not set in stone. Like I don't have like my team or anything like that set yet. I have a good idea based on my internships. In both my internships, I was working on displays, so computer displays, which I think is a super interesting technology, and I'd definitely be super excited to work on that. But also, like, just I'd be working on computer hardware in general, and I think it's a super exciting space for me because it's technically really challenging, but it's really user facing. So I like that part of engineering that like connects to people. That's why I'm excited about it.
Well, we all wish you the best of luck, Audrey. I know you're going to do well. I know it's a kind of a little bit of a homecoming for you to go up to Microsoft as well, as this, you've been there the last 2 summers with internships. And so this will be a nice kind of comfortable transition. And you like the Seattle area, right? You've kind of fallen in love with it with your time over there?
Yeah. There's so much to do there. So I've only been in Seattle for 1 summer because I was remote.
That's right, because last summer, I forgot about that.
Summer. But yeah, I'm excited to be in a new place. I like being new places, and trying new things. I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn, just like personally, and then of course my job. I know I'm going to learn so much, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I just think it's a great opportunity for some personal growth, which is always a good thing. Also, this is beside the Seattle point, but if we're talking about places, I realized Emily is from like Denver-ish, so
Yeah.
we have a lot of Colorado representation on.
Oh wow, lots of Colorado.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure like you went to high school really close to me too.
Yeah, I went to Denver School of the Arts, so shout out to anyone from there listening to this.
Emily, what high school did you go to?
I went to Cherry Creek High School.
Cherry
It's like
Creek,
one
yeah.
of yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, we get
Yeah.
a lot of students. Cherry Creek.
For some reason, I thought you went to Fairview, but
Oh, Fairview, yeah. That would be cool too. Also huge Denver school or Colorado school.
Yeah.
But Creek's big school. I played tennis in high school, but not for my school because my school didn't have tennis. And Creek's tennis team is very good. So those were tough losses. Tough losses for me. Yeah.
Well, Audrey, thank you so much for all the work that you have put into this podcast. I don't think people, I've said this a few times, but I can't overstate how much effort has been put into this. I mean, there's the idea of like producing a podcast, sure, putting up an episode, recording a few, whatever, editing a few, whatever, but then you keep on top of that and you manage people to get recordings on the calendar. You help them do that. You help them edit. You taught people how to produce their own episodes, Emily being one of them, and Emily rising in leadership inside of this. And we're excited for her opportunities, but that's also a result of your work, Audrey. I mean, that's something to really take great pride in. Not to mention the most broad team that we've ever had contributing to podcasts. You know, each week was something slightly different and by someone slightly different. And that idea of this last summer where you were a very strong advocate and a lot of behind the scenes meeting about amplifying diverse voices, not only across our podcast, but other Viterbi Voices media. I want to thank you for your strong voice in that and all of and contributing to and helping to influence our efforts to be more equity minded and part of our diversity and equity initiatives that we've been doing. It's been a tremendous year. Not only from a volume perspective, but from a quality perspective. And it's rare that anyone ever does both of those things. Sometimes people get quality, sometimes people get quantity. You've done both and never sacrificed anything in the long run. That has also contributed on the other side for our admission process. As we were recording, I just kind of got our final numbers in, and our incoming class for fall 2021 has broken pretty much every single record we've ever had on bringing in an incoming class when it comes to demographics. This will be on record our most diverse incoming class we've ever seen, shattering the previous records last year, which were shattering other previous records. And so each year when we think we can't do better as far as being an equity-minded institution, we've gotten even better. And that's going to, create, infinite numbers of possibilities of collaboration and just diverse voices at the table when it comes to classrooms and study partners and eventually solutions to extreme engineering problems that are in the world today, and thus, fueling our overall mission, which is not just a marketing slogan, because it is a mission of making sure that we're trying to engineer a better world for all humanity. Something as interesting and specific as putting out good podcasts seems far from that mission, but it is much more directly related than I think any of us ever really stop to think about, because we get caught up in like, okay, what do we got to do today? We got to get a podcast out. We got to get a blog up. We got to do whatever. But Audrey, you have been a leading voice over the last 2 years, and it's going to be incredibly hard to see you go, but I'm so proud of you. It's a bittersweet moment to see you go off and do some cool things. Emily has nothing but giant shoes to fill, but I'm also confident that Emily is going to do a great job as well. Averaging 50 per season is going to be really hard but I'm so confident we're going to keep up that trend, because Audrey, you've set a pace and you've set a benchmark, a high water mark that I think everyone will look up to for quite some time. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us, not only in the school, as far as the administration goes, the staff and faculty, But for all the current students that you've represented as one of the main voices of the podcast over the last couple of years, you've represented them very well and made sure that they were represented, all the different types of voices. And for our prospective students that listen and the parents that listen, we've got a lot of parent listeners as well. You have provided a tremendous resource and insight into a place that is oftentimes hard to get to because maybe not everybody can travel. And in the age of the pandemic over the last year, the podcast has become a fantastic resource and outlet for students to really have more access into it. And you are one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that they've had that access, specifically from various viewpoints. So can't say it enough, Audrey. Thank you for all the work that you've done. It's been tremendous. You've been fantastic. It's been a pleasure working with you, and always a lot of fun to get you in a recording and to see you get uncomfortable when I ask you personal questions that I see you can't answer. I see you don't want to answer. But thank you, Emily. We will chat, and at some point over the summer, we will release our first teaser episode for season 7. But we're not going to put a date on it today. But just we're going to take a little break. Everybody deserves a little break as we go through finals and get settled. But Emily and I will get situated in the back end. We'll start to figure out what we're going to do for season 7, and come at you with a whole new season with a whole new sound, a whole new look, a whole new structure. It should be fun. Any parting words, Audrey?
I think just first of all, thanks, Paul, for all the kind words. I really appreciate it. And thank you. A lot of people help with the podcast too. So thanks to all of those people for I've relied on them a lot over the past 2 years. And of course, thanks to all of our listeners. And I know Emily's going to do an awesome job next year. So I'm excited to get some new voices on our podcast with Emily. So thanks, everyone.
You get the final word. Sign it off.
I get the final word?
That's it. This is your last episode.
Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. Have an amazing beginning of the summer, everyone. We all deserve it after the year we've all had. So yeah, enjoy. And I hope the podcast, I think I've said this a few times, but I hope it has reduced some stress for a lot of people, or at least some people. And it's been a good resource, I hope, as well. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening.